Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host, Mark Ronich of statewide news service, jbiztechvalley.com, and as you can see, now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Yep, I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community or doesn't, as the case may be. And when you talk about government, you talk about Judaism, you got to talk about Assemblywoman Didi Barrett,
All right.
who is both
There's
Jewish,
a segue.
who's both Jewish and a member of the government. So anyway, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I'm working on my segues. This is the best one I've done so far. So anyway, Didi, it's really a pleasure to have you here. You're one of my favorite legislators.
Well, that's very kind of you.
And
Thank
I've
you.
been watching you from the sidelines since you've been elected.
When were you elected?
I was elected in 2012 in a special election to finish the term of Mark Molinaro, who was then elected to the Dutchess County executive.
Right.
And so it went from being a Republican seat to being a Democrat seat. And I'm the first Democrat to represent that area for the most part.
What is your area?
It's a big district.
Eileen Hickey, I think, represents.
She had a small part of it,
Well,
but
part
not
of it, but
not the Columbia County part.
But that's the last Democrat who even comes close to
Right.
representing it. So I just thought
It's
that-
a very
in.
big district. It's it's 70 miles north and south and about 40 miles east and west. The southern end is the very southern tip of the town of Poughkeepsie. The northern end is a very northern end of the town of Ghent. So part of the village of Chatham that's in Ghent is the northern end, and part of the village of Wappingers Falls that's in the town of Poughkeepsie, not Wappingers, is the southern end, and then basically goes from the river to the state border. With a few towns gerrymandered out.
Yeah.
And you don't have the city of Poughkeepsie, but you have the town.
Yes, exactly. This is the town, not the city, and I don't have Red Hook or Rhinebeck, but I have the towns all around them. So it's, yes. And
Well, then you don't represent the Rhinebeck Jewish Center.
I do not,
No,
yeah.
That's Rabbi Hecht.
Exactly.
So-
No, I don't have any of his, or the JCC, because it's in the city of Poughkeepsie.
And who's the legislator who represents Rhinebeck?
Kevin Cahill represents Rhinebeck, and Frank Scartatos represents the city of Poughkeepsie.
Okay, well, so they're both Democrats, so you must all get along regardless
Oh, yeah.
of the
Absolutely.
territory, you know.
We get along, yeah. No, it's just hard, when constituents are reaching out and they know one or the other. It's kind of like, well, can you help me with? We'd be happy to help you, but it's actually not my district. They have to.
Well, I would tell everyone that they should go on the Assembly website, put in their address, and they could find out who their legislator is.
Sure.
And they could do it that
Really?
way on the homepage. Yeah, they
That's
have
very
it
interesting.
put in. They have it broken out by not just by zip code, but by
Yeah,
street.
that's-
It has to be by street, and it
Yeah.
can't be by mailing address because a lot of the, in the area is rural, so there's post office boxes that are not where they actually pay their
Taxes.
basic taxes. It's where it's where they get their mail, and that's it. So I have people who are living in one town, in a totally different school district, and have their mail in a third town. It's just, it's.
Like the
It's
town of
quite-
Guilderland. The town of Guilderland is the same way.
Is
And,
it? I don't know
So it's
that.
very strange. Anyhow, so you are on you're chair of the subcommittee on regional tourism development. You're members of like 7, 8 other committees.
Yes.
So you are like all over the map. No wonder, you're just so busy running through all these committees. But
I'm busy, and the interesting thing is that there are committees that I'm not on that would be equally relevant to my district. For example, I'm not on education at this point, but I have, all are part of 15, 16 school districts in my district.
Really?
I
So
have,
high.
almost 24 libraries. I'm not on the library committee. I have 5 institutions of higher learning. I'm not on higher ed. So I mean, it's a very rich district with a lot of very interesting. I have the FDR Library in my district, and the
So historic.
very important historic sites. The Culinary Institute of America, important gastronomics. I have Olana, so
there's food
cultural
safe-
sites.
There's a committee on food safety and nutrition. A task force.
A task force, I think,
Right.
yeah, that
So
Ellen
that's-
Jaffe has.
That might be something that you could.
Yeah, no, I have. Well, the regional tourism development was something that I had thought about and asked the speaker if we could create that subcommittee because of the
It's a new
importance.
committee?
Yes,
Oh,
I'm the
very
first.
good.
I'm the first chair
Chair.
of it.
And how many people are on that committee?
Well, the subcommittees are, operate in a different way than
Right.
the standing committees. So basically, as a chair, you have the opportunity to do what you want with it and shape it. So we're working on a couple different initiatives, including a really great one with state parks and our community colleges, which is all about training the next generation of artisans and craftspeople to both work on these historic sites, because that's one of the biggest issues, is getting people who actually know traditional crafts and know how to build stone walls or do traditional masonry or work on slate roofs or wooden windows or things like that. And that's one of the issues, not just in these sites, but in all our communities that have old houses and old offices and old buildings. So we want to really develop this next generation to have these skills, but also to be able to support their families as running businesses with these skills. So it's kind of developing a business and these trades at the same time, and working with our community colleges and working with the State Historic and Preservation Office, SHPO.
When you say regional, is you're only about your region?
No,
Probably
it's
not.
looking at regions as kind of a.
But you're
And
concerned with all kinds of regions.
Sure, and but obviously my first focus is going to be on the Hudson Valley, which is what, my region is, and it's
But there's the North
huge.
Country, there's Finger Lakes, there's
Sure.
Southern Tier, there's Western New York, there's the Northern Tier,
Oh.
there's, Upper Hudson Valley,
The
there's.
tourism is gaining, though? I mean,
Huge.
New
It's an
York
enormous-
State is...
And it's an enormous economic driver, not just in New York City, and we have just outside of my region, because it's of my district, because it's the city of Poughkeepsie, but the walkway over the Hudson has been a phenomenal
Really?
tourist attraction, unbelievable.
I'll have to go on
You
there.
have to. Way exceeded what anybody was expecting of it.
Yeah, I also didn't think, okay, you made a walkway,
It's extraordinary. Yeah, no, it's
Really?
great. And for just as an example of the intersection of media and history, the FDR Library reopened a year ago with much updated, very interesting scheduled programming and technology.
Now,
But
Mark, we
once
have to go there over
when
there.
the
That
when
sounds
the Ken
interesting to
Burns
me.
when the Ken Burns PBS series
Miniseries.
on the Roosevelts came out, it increased the attendance at the FDR Library phenomenally, in Valkill, the Eleanor Roosevelt's home. So all of these are amazing tourist destinations, and when people come in, then they stay, and then they eat in a diner, in a restaurant, and they go to the movies, and it's been huge. They come in the fall and they buy apples, and it all feeds on itself. It's been great.
I was at Valkill. They give out awards every year.
Yes.
Queen Noor was there from
Yes,
Jordan.
I was there that year too.
And
Yeah.
Joan Rivers
Uh-huh.
was there. And
Yeah,
I
no,
got to meet her. and-
those Valkill Awards are really wonderful.
Yeah.
They really do get an interesting cross-section.
So,
of
and
people.
then with FDR, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a member of the Knights of Pythias. And
Uh-huh.
we have the original documentation when FDR signed the declaration that he was going to be a member of the Knights of Pythias. And he went through the ranks to become a knight in the White House.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
back then, it was easier to get into the White House than it is today. But there were some people from Poughkeepsie who knew him
Mm-hmm.
that were invited down to the White House, and he went through because he was in a wheelchair. So
Uh-huh.
he went through the ranks, and they made him a Pythian. And the folks at the library did not know this. And I gave them the original documentation. And you should have seen this archivist. It was like I made his day. It was like Hanukkah for him.
That's wonderful.
It was
That's
amazing.
great. Uh-huh.
He says, of all the things we knew about Roosevelt, we didn't know he was a member of the Knights of Pythias.
That's really interesting that they
He was
didn't
like,
know that.
Wow. Like, okay, all right, calm down now. It's okay.
A new bit on the story. Yeah, that's great.
So I added to that. So let me just go through the other committees that you're on. Tourism, Parks, Arts, and Sports Development.
That's one.
That's one. Aging Committee, Agriculture Committee, the Economic Development, Job Creation, Commerce, and Industry is one. Mental Health Committee, Veterans Affairs, and the Legislative Women's Caucus.
Let's talk about each one separately. You just rattled off a lot of issues.
You know, we got to
over
have her
there.
back 7 times because
Yeah,
each
I know,
one of
that's-
these.
each one's just a major issue.
Each one of these we could talk for
They're
a half
all
hour.
important issues. Yeah.
Very important.
Mhm.
So when it comes to, like agriculture, aging, I mean, you know, I mean, there seems to be a link with every one of these except for mental health.
Really, mental health is probably the most,
Overarching?
yes,
yeah?
I think, you know, I mean, I think we are seeing on so many different fronts how mental health is one of the, probably the most profound health issues of our time, and it's not gotten the recognition and the attention that it deserves.
Why, because the number of people, or it's how much money is the economy
I
is
think the
losing?
recognition of what mental health is. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day because we, you know, obviously all the gun stuff, they're talking about that. All the returning veterans are talking about mental health. We had a forum yesterday in Hudson about children of incarcerated parents and the impact on kids. I mean, our kids today, if you're dealing with, you know, a parent who's in prison for, or, you know, even been arrested and is being held, the impact that that has on kids. And kids, you know, go to school, they're expected to just behave normally, and those kinds of things have enormous impact on their mental well-being. And so, you know, I think we don't look at mental health as an issue that the way we look at you know, physical health in terms of preventive care, understanding of what all the different ramifications are. There's, I think, a lot to mental health that we haven't begun to
Because
address.
you can't
Is the
see it
same-
under a microscope, so to speak. So
Exactly.
person's walking down the street, oh, he looks good.
You don't know if he's depressed. You
No.
don't know if he's, you know, under stress. You don't know if she's, you know, in postpartum depression. I mean, there's so many things like that that
Good.
people.
How, the SAFE Act bill that was voted on a few years ago, is that separate and apart from mental health issues that have to deal with guns, or do you see that it was connected and would help?
I think the issues around guns and mental health are complicated. I mean, I think we have seen, unfortunately, in many of these mass shootings that and it's usually a young white male in most of these cases, is struggling with some sort of a mental disturbance, disorder. I don't know what you know, they aren't necessarily the classic, it's not schizophrenia, it's not, you know, psychotic, it's not those things that we normally think about as mental health, but that's exactly my point, is that there are so many, the range, the spectrum of people struggling with mental illness or disorders is so broad that, you know, we haven't begun to address that. And I think that lumping mental health or people with mental illness as, you know, one category is really problematic. And you can't, people with mental illness are more likely to be the victims than the perpetrators of a lot of this kind of gun violence. But even when you look at what's happening on our streets, I mean, most of these people are, you know, have dealt with childhood issues where it's poverty or drug in their communities or violence in their own communities. So this is what they've lived with. So, I mean, all of those things I think are important mental health
One of the
issues.
answers, people, I'm just throwing out to you, I don't have a position, is just that of institutionalizing more people. They used to institutionalize people, and
It's definitely not the way to go. I think much more understanding and much more recognition of what the impact of things. Well, it's things like PTSD. I mean, it's one, you recognize it if it's, you know, it's been a soldier whose, you know, platoon was blown up or was in a vehicle that got blown up. I mean, that, and is coming back home. You know, it's pretty clear that to have post-traumatic stress syndrome from something like that is clear to somebody. But if you have a child who grew up with gunshots outside their door, you know, every night when they went to sleep, and they're a sensitive child that was, you know, that where this impacted them in, you know, in a really substantive, profound way, they're going to be struggling with mental health issues just as a result of that, and that's post-traumatic stress syndrome too. I mean, I think, you know, we were talking about this in relation to the parents being kids of, you know, in a family. If there's a raid on a house or in an apartment building, and a bunch of the people are dragged off in handcuffs, for those kids that are watching this, no matter what their age, that's got to be a traumatic experience.
Sure.
So, you know, I think that we don't really recognize what the psychological and emotional impact of so many things is on people, and that's what mental health really is all about.
So when I talk about the SAFE Act, would you have voted the same way, regardless of the connection with mental illness?
I'm not really sure what your question is. I would vote the same way because personally I would have done anything as a mother to ensure that no other parent had to bury a child as a result of gun violence, and that was something that I, that I felt was why I voted. I don't really understand what you're saying.
You voted in favor of this?
I did, yes,
Yeah.
I did, and it was a big issue in my district.
It is.
I have a lot of pushback. There have been websites with me in
Target?
crosshairs
Yeah.
as a result of my vote.
That's scary. But
Sensitive issue
what I-
over here,
what I
especially
was-
upstate New York.
What I
Yeah.
was thinking of was really just when you brought up early, in the very beginning about the guns and mental illness. And the first thing I think of when you mentioned that was the SAFE Act. And then, with mental illness and people and the things that we've read about, I mean, it seems like.
People that are
it
mentally
seems
ill are
like
not
the-
supposed to have a gun. That's old news.
But that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying.
it's-
The people who get the guns are not the law-abiding citizens. I mean, they're the
Well,
ones
I think
who-
many of the people who have committed, these young men who have committed the most recent of these terrible mass killings have had guns legally.
Really?
They were in their family, or they were, not all of them, but most of them.
Okay, so, yeah, and you were saying mental health, Veterans Affairs, and aging.
Mental
but-
health issues are really important
But
for
not in-
veterans and for
yeah.
aging.
So agriculture, economic development, and tourism, I think, are three connected
Mhm.
areas also, because the more we farm, the more economic development. I gotta tell you a quick story. Paul Tonko
Mhm.
told me this one time and said it in a speech. When most people think of New York State, they think of the bright lights on Broadway, the skyscrapers of Manhattan, and the Statue of Liberty. He says, let me tell you what the real New York State is. The silos are our skyscrapers, the bright lights in the milking barn at 5 a.m. are the bright lights of New York, and the liberty to farm one's own land is the liberty of New York State. And for 25
Go
years
Paul.
I've been repeating this. Okay?
Go Paul, that was, yeah.
And that's so poetic, and it's such a picture of what New York State really is, that I just had
Mm-hmm.
to relay that to you, because you're on all three committees.
Yeah, no, I am very passionate about the farms and the agriculture in our district and the products that are growing out of that. We have so many young farmers who are moving up to the area and
Really,
starting.
you feel it's a young person?
We have
Usually they say people don't want to go into the
No, we have a
profession.
lot of young farmers who are moving to the Hudson Valley who want to be farming. The biggest obstacle for them is access to land because it's so expensive. But we have a lot of that, and we also have a lot of people who come up to the area to start craft breweries or distilleries or cideries and.
Is that part of agriculture now?
Oh, absolutely, of course it
It's not
is.
part of alcoholism?
I think if people are abusive of it is, but yeah, no, it's absolutely. I mean, where do you think the
The hops? No.
the hops, the grapes, the
Right.
the apples,
Right.
it's all.
So it's
these are
agriculture and it's economic development.
absolutely,
It's all there, and then it brings in the tourism. So it brings in
and
all
it's
three.
and they're and it's creating jobs. It's all good.
I joke, I jest. Anyhow, you had legislation that was signed into law about supporting older farmers. Could you tell us? Congratulations on that.
Well, we
Could you-
had two bills. One kind of they're kind of bookends, supporting younger farmers and supporting older farmers, because we want to be sure that the industry is carried on to the next generation. And the average age of a farmer in New York in the country is about 57, and there has to be a mechanism in place for transitioning for the farmers to work as long as they want to, but when they're ready to not be out there milking every, in the middle of the night, as you say, or as Paul Tonko said, they need to be able to plan and not just sort of one day say, okay, enough. And that's where access to land and ways to transition land is really important.
So
we've been working.
what sort of support does this bill give to older farmers?
It sets up some resources for them, so if they're, when they get to the point where they're thinking about transitioning, that the state has resources available to them.
Such as, I don't know.
Just, documents, help them network and to get to, certain, if they need to be partnered with some younger farmers who are, who are interested, matched with younger farmers,
Oh, okay.
access to, you know, different kinds of programs that
You could
might.
tell I didn't read the bill, that's why I'm asking you, I should have, but it was.
It's you know, it's really to be there to, it's a part of, you know, a lot of times it's, this legislation is about just shining a spotlight on issues that we want to be sure that the state and the local community
The
start paying
agriculture is
attention.
growing in New York State.
It's growing. Did you mean that pun?
Growing.
No, I didn't get that.
Okay.
It is growing in New York State. It is, yes, it's a huge industry in New York State.
Yeah, Mark always says, you know, agriculture is one of, you, that's,
It's
I
the-
quote you, you could quote Paul Tonko, I quote Mark.
It's
yeah.
definitely, yes.
You
it's
think
one
Wall
of,
Street, New York State is
No,
Wall
but
It's a-
Street.
agriculture
it's-
is our number one
we-
industry, tourism is our number two.
and we are, you know, we are in the top 3 in a number of different apples and other products that we grow here in New York State. We're huge. We're the number 1, I think, Greek yogurt producers in the country. So it's
I'm so proud of the
and we-
state for what it offers like that.
well, and we have actually, we're working on initiative another initiative in Columbia County to really develop the goat industry, both as for goat cheese, but also, you know, some of our other ethnic communities really like goat meat. So, you know, you
Great.
have an opportunity to develop a new livestock, whole new industry here in the state. And in my district, we have a French goat cheese producer, one of the biggest in the country, I mean, in the world, that's interested in doing, they've bought the name Hudson Valley Creamery, and they want, right now, they've been importing the cheese curd, and they want to be able to have local goats produce the milk so that they can do make the local cheese from Hudson Valley and New York State goats. So that's like a whole new industry opportunity.
There's this place on Route 82, JoJo's Pizza,
Hmm.
and right in the town of Taconic.
Right.
And he puts, you know, goat cheese and all sort of goat products in his refrigerator there, and it's just amazing.
It's
how,
delicious, yeah, it's
you know,
all
and
great
it's all
stuff.
local, and it's and then
Yeah,
you
we have so many great local producers of cheese and jams and
on the Taconic, the Taste New York
right,
kiosk
full of
that's
stores,
there, and
right.
full of the goat
Hmm.
products and.
So we just need to really have more goats that can produce milk here in New York State, so
But
that we
it's
don't.
their meat too. I mean,
Right,
you
exactly.
You have it for tzatziki, or you have it
Mhm.
for the Greek sandwiches. You know, I was in Cyprus once, so but I see that this is
Yeah,
a,
goat meat is very popular.
Yeah. So, how many other bills have you gotten passed this year, or
Oh gosh, I don't.
just approximate? I mean,
I think we've been quite successful. I think we had about 8 or 10,
yeah.
maybe even more passed in this past year. We did very well. I mean, one of the ones I'm most proud of, which was the year before, was the bill supporting Lyme disease patients and their doctors, and ensuring that they can prescribe what they feel is in the best interest of the patient without being harassed by regulatory agencies. So that's a big issue
Really?
in my district and throughout the state. Is we are, we're one of the top Lyme disease states, or Lyme and other tick-borne
Governor
diseases.
Pataki had Lyme disease, and he really shined the light on that whole issue.
So that's
So,
in
yeah.
the Hudson Valley has unfortunately been one of the
It's named
hotbeds.
after Lyme, Connecticut, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
where
not
it
that
started,
far.
Yeah. You said that you had a bill here that requires each violator of Buster's Law to register his or her name and address with the Division of Criminal Justice Services.
What's
This is-
Buster's Law?
Yeah,
This is
first
a
of all-
challenging. This is a challenging bill. We're still working on this, and we had introduced a version of the bill a
It's
couple years
abuse of
ago.
animals,
It's an anti-animal. I mean, Buster's Law is against animal abusers. But here's the challenge. The challenge is that county by county, this information is kept. So if an abuser goes from one county where he's no longer available to adopt or buy a dog or a cat or animals, and goes to another county, there's no way for the people in that county to know what his past is, what his history
There's no
is.
central registry.
There isn't, and there's some issues with registry, because basically what our bill has asked for is that people self-register, which is like what a sex abuse registry does, but that hasn't worked so well either. So I think it's something we're trying to figure out the best way, because we want. I mean, there really are serial abusers, and there's a terrible legacy of animal abuse. And
They also say that people who start with animal abuse eventually abuse people
Exactly.
It's a
anyway.
gateway to.
exactly, yeah, no,
If you
they're,
have no, that's a put of idea from the Jewish view that we are Jewish, and Judaism is always on the forefront as far as I'm concerned of humanity and ethics. And thousands of years ago, it's actually one of the commandments is not to tsar balichaim in Hebrew, giving pain to an animal. Surely not to a human being, but that's not such a big news, obviously, to people.
right, but
So you can't hurt people.
But to have that value and to be able to actually support it legally it's turning out to be more challenging than we would have thought. But
Interesting.
What's this bill that says relates to prorating a veteran's exemption if such veteran moves within the same county?
yeah, this
What
is
sort of an exemption are we talking about?
this was tax exemptions, and it was had to do with changing locations within the same
So
county.
it
and
sounds like a paperwork type of
yeah,
thing.
it is a
It's
lot. Sometimes the
administrative.
legislation is that. So,
No.
but we're very.
Did you have a constituent come to you?
Yes,
and
we're
say-
very committed to trying to help ensure that that our veterans have the access to all the rights and opportunities that are available to them, and sometimes they're just as you say, paperwork or other sort of regulatory things that get in the way. And and one of the issues, and the governor has just vetoed this for the second time, is this issue of different conflicts that veterans of some conflicts are entitled to certain things, but it's legislatively written that only certain what conflicts are included, and so other conflicts are if they were not.
Wars, you mean?
Well, but I mean, there's lots of. That's the whole point. Is it's way more than world wars. I mean, we're
No,
talking
it's
about
not.
people who were in the
Afghanistan,
Balkans
I
or
mean.
in Afghanistan or in other.
They say
or,
Korea's a conflict. They say Korea, it's not a Korean war, it was a Korean conflict. That's what I've heard. So, but
There are different-
So
yeah.
you're talking about these conflicts that weren't declarations of war.
Right, exactly.
But we were still fighting
right.
overseas.
Or
Okay.
people were on. As we've seen in the War of Terror, you don't even have to. You can be stationed in a place that's that it's a high risk area where there isn't necessarily a named conflict going on, but you can still be the victim of terror. So it's
And why
a terrorist attack.
And why did the governor veto that?
Because it has financial implications that he says should be addressed in the budget. So hopefully it will be addressed in the budget.
Seems that's the catch-all when he wants to take credit for something.
It's,
It should be addressed in the budget. So, and then you have, are you pleased and comfortable now in the assembly with the way things are going and
Oh,
how
yes.
things are? You have no. Do you have things that you want to do now that you've gotten your feet wet over the past 3 years? You have a vision of what direction you want your legislative career to go into?
Well, I am very, as I said, very passionate about my district, and as really
Yeah.
being an advocate and a voice for what's a very diverse district. I really, there's a lot going on in my district, and so that's my priority.
Because you're a long-time Hudson Valley resident. I mean, I
And
think
my,
you-
and my district, as we said earlier, has not necessarily had majority representation
That's right.
for a very long time. So to be able to educate my colleagues, and the Hudson Valley is kind of a bridge between upstate and downstate, and in some ways I see that as my role to remind my New York City colleagues that their constituents are being fed by my constituents who are farmers who travel down to to New York City on a regular basis to both supply restaurants and farmers markets, and those are really important. It's a symbiotic relationship. We need each other.
No, I always tell people I go through a metamorphosis around Putnam County when I'm driving. I have a different way of driving north of Putnam, and I have a different way of driving south of Putnam, just because of the traffic and how aggressive you have to be when you're getting closer to the city. So,
Well, once you get into Dutchess County, into the rural area, it's kind of like your shoulders drop and you
Yeah.
take an exhale, and it's beautiful, and you enjoy it right now, especially the colors are
Oh, it's
so beautiful.
Wonderful, yes.
So, yeah, it is. It's
All right,
nice.
I think we're out of time, but you're such a good guest at Didi Barrett. You're doing incredible good work for
Well,
the
thank you.
people of your region, but of New York State too. Continue with good work and with success and good health.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Much continued success.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.